These guitars don't sound good. These guitars are a little harsh. There's a strange ring mod texture happening that we put on them, and they were tracked on a Telecaster of all things. On their own, they feel wrong, like something you'd instinctively want to fix. But once we process these and the full mix comes in, this is what you get.
Close with the daylight, used to shine, used to shine. Every breath takes metallic, corroding on the inside.
Now, that gap between what sounds bad in isolation and what works in context is what this video today is all about. So this track is something that started out with our friend Jeremiah coming over to the studio, and we were testing out the new Neural DSP Misha Mansour amp suite, and it has this pedal in it that kind of does this ring mod, pitch shifting, down tuning thing. And every time Jeremiah was chugging, it was making the guitar pitch down. And since it was on the Telecaster, it kind of had this cool tone to it. It sounds kind of bad in solo. Bad tones are subjective. But we all just kind of started laughing because of how unconventional it sounded. And we just started putting down drums to it. And before you knew it, we had a whole entire song. And then shortly after, our friend Josh was in town, and I was like, dude, come on over to the studio, get on the mic and track some vocals. So that's kind of how this song all came together. The way that I go about processing guitars like this is I switch back and forth between solo and context of the mix. I also cross-check the relationship of the guitar tone to the bass a whole lot, and that's super important so you don't get lost in the sauce. Mixing guitar solo isn't a bad thing, and sometimes you got to do it, especially whenever you want to hear those nitty-gritty details in the top end or maybe some cab resonance and really dissect what the tone's doing. But whenever you have a song like this where everything is fighting for space, I have found that mixing in solo for the details and then flipping back and forth to a full mix context and singling out the guitars and bass works really well to get you to where you need to be. So with that said, you've already heard the guitar tone soloed, so let's go ahead and take a look at what the bass is doing. By itself, the bass isn't meant to sound huge or super flashy. What it's doing is carrying the weight, controlling the low end, and giving the guitar something solid to sit on top of. The low mids and sub information that people often try to force into guitars are already living here. Now, if you're curious of the processing I have on the bass track, I'm using the Modern Music Solutions Seismic Bass Amp, going a little bit brighter with the 1K right here, and I'm going into a Sans Amp styled overdrive, and then I'm just making some basic EQ moves, kind of cutting out a little bit the low end, some of that really sharp, nasty high stuff, and then I think I kind of did a little bit more of it over here later on in the mixing process for whatever reason. Now let's listen to the guitar and bass together. This relationship matters more than either sound individually. When people say a guitar tone sounds thin, they're usually reacting to missing context, not the tone itself. In this mix, the guitars don't need to feel big on their own because the bass is already handling the size. The guitars are there to add aggression, texture, and movement above that foundation. Now, I'm going to go over the guitar bus processing real quick. So like I said before, these are printed guitar tones from the Misha Mansour amp from Neural DSP. So individually, they don't have much going on, just a little bit of Pro Q. I was fighting with these guitars a little bit because they were single coil, so they were kind of a little hissy and had a lot of low end buildup on them because of the tone that we went with. And that's really just kind of across all of the tracks. We did quad track this, so the layers are duck down negative 12 dB. Most of the processing happened on the bus. Now this does look like a lot, but here's how it sounded like before. And all I really did here, going step by step with this, was I, again, Pro Q4, just cut out some of the lows and highs. And next I have my DA3A, which is an Audioscape LA3A clone. It's one of my favorite compressors in the studio. It really locks things in, and it's especially helpful on guitars. Next, I have the Cornif Amplified Instrument Processor, adding a little bit of stereo width, getting rid of some high shrill again. And I'm using the Bright Tube proprietary signal processing. And then I have another Pro Q, adding sides to the mids of the guitars, just kind of spreading them out, leaving room for the bass in the center, cutting out some more high end. And then Pro MB, because why not, on the chugs that were kind of getting a little out of hand whenever the bass was also doing the same thing, just a ton of low end buildup. And then just L1 just to lock them in place volume wise. So this is what that sounded like before and after the processing. Now I'll play that, bypassing it in and out with the full mix before the vocals. At this point, the guitars might sound a little darker than before, and it can feel like they've lost a little bit of bite compared to pre-processing. But if you pay attention to how they're sitting with the drums and how much space they're leaving in the upper mids, that's very important for whenever we bring the vocals in.
Close where the daylight used to shine, used to shine. Every breath takes metallic corroding on the inside.
Now this is where those mix decisions start to make more sense. The guitars don't have to fight the vocals because they were already shaped to react to them. There is a lot of vocal distortion on the screams, and there's a lot of saturation, so the density of the mid-range all lock together instead of competing against one another. Nothing has to move out of the way last minute because the space was already planned for ahead of time. A lot of this mix also relies on top-down mix decisions, which means every move affects everything else. Small changes at the mix bus or group level can completely shift how the guitars feel. So that's something to be conscious of, especially in dense, aggressive metal music. And we'll definitely do a dedicated video on top-down mixing in the future. So the key thing to take away here is that context matters, and you should be building your tones with intent throughout the entire mixing process or production process. This is where you stop chasing isolated good tones and start building a sound that actually feels like your own. If you found this breakdown useful, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and let us know what you'd like to see next in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. I'm Johnny, and we'll see you in the next Thermal Noise production.
Close where the daylight used to shine.